Välkomna tillbaka. Svenskättade Jonathan Franzen ses av många som en av vår tids största och viktigaste författare. Och han skriver gärna om relationer och menar att det är just den emotionella, känslomässiga erfarenheten som är det enda som räknas i livet. Och den senaste romanen, Renhet eller Purity på engelska, den handlar väldigt mycket om familjehemligheter. Jag träffade Jonathan Franzen, så här gick det till. Very welcome, Jonathan Franzen. Welcome back.
It's nice to be back. It's 4 years.
Yeah, it's 4 years since your book Freedom, Frihet in Swedish, came, and it was a lot of talks about it and discussions about it, and people really liked it. Not only the critics, it was by many people.
Well, yes, and that's what I'm writing for, really, more than for the critics. Mm-hmm. You never know with the critics, but it's important to try to, connect with people.
Yeah, the readers.
Yeah.
This book, Purity, is a novel of secrets and relationships, lies and manipulations. Would that be a good description of the novel?
I'm much happier having it described that way than a book about, the internet or East Germany or something, because yes, I see it as trying to go very deep into two kinds of relationships, one between men and women and the other between parents and children, particularly mothers and their children.
And this is what's so great with your books, I think, that you are, of course, writing about our time, about the US, or this is about, as you say, East Germany and the US as well too, but you do it, you tell your story through people and their relationships, and they are quite difficult, relationships.
By and large, yes. It's the misfortune of being a novelist. Trouble in a relationship is more interesting to read about than mindless bliss.
Do you get a lot of inspiration from your own upbringing and childhood? Dysfunctional families, is this about?
I always am uncomfortable with the phrase dysfunctional family, because for psychiatrists that means something very particular. That means the child was left hungry for 3 days while the mother did drugs or something. I certainly came from a highly functional family. Nevertheless, it was not a happy family. So I kind of prefer unhappy to...
Unhappy, it's better. That really kind of affects the children very much, and you carry that inside it.
Yes, it's important not to complain too much about it compared to the really terrible upbringings you can have. And there is a mother in this book who is, I think, really probably mentally ill. And her son, who's one of the main characters, the East German Andreas Wolf, he is really scarred. He's a very, very messed up guy.
But if we start with Purity, which is your main character.
Yes.
Or Pip.
Pip, as she calls herself, yes.
A college student. And her problem is that she doesn't know who her father is. And when she asks her mother, she doesn't get an answer.
That is true, although Pip is a very sensible, modern young person, and she doesn't imagine having a relationship with her father. She is in debt because she went to school and ran up big debts, as can happen in the U.S., more than $100,000, and she thinks, if I can find that father, he will give me the money.
It's a practical solution.
She's kind of a practical person,
But also it must be a frustration for her, because that's what I felt when I read it, not to get a straight answer from her mother.
Well, she knows that her mother has changed her name, changed her entire identity.
Who is she?
Who is she, exactly. And that's so it's not so much, I think, for them about Pip finding this father because she wants to know who her father is. It's because she feels her mother is not telling her the most important facts about her life. So it's a problem within the relationship between mother and daughter, really.
What would you say that the effect is? Because that's what I've been thinking when I read the book, that you don't have a very clear background, and what does that do to your identity?
We see in the first section of the book that Pip is almost pathologically jealous. She feels she can't read other people. She doesn't know if she can trust anyone. She feels there's no one I can trust. She trusts her mother because her mother is so loving, but the result is, I think, she's really quite messed up and can't form a relationship with anyone really because she doesn't trust anyone.
Mm-hmm. Do you think this is a modern young woman of today? That you feel lost in a way?
You know, she's atypical in that she grew up without a television. She didn't get a computer until she was 12. Her mother tried to shield her from the digital world. And, you know, Pip, of course, she's modern. She texts. She has her smartphone. But I never think of my characters as typifying. I'm very struck by how individual they are. So, if anything, the fact that she reads books and hasn't watched the TV shows that other people have make her actually kind of a freak, for which she again blames her mother.
But how did you find her?
How did I find her? You know, that's you're asking Burger King for the recipe for the secret sauce.
They would never tell me.
You're asking the hedge fund for the investment strategy.
But you didn't see her by accident, or you just read something that started your imagination?
I think there was a period when I didn't really know very many young people because I was moving between being a young person myself and a middle-aged person. And then in the last 10 years, partly because my nephews have grown up and also just because it's become easier again, now it's clearly when someone is 25, that's a young person. And it's not like there's no mistaking me for anyone like a 25-year-old. So I actually now have a lot of young friends. And I listen to them and I hear their stories. And one of them was kind enough to let me use a story of her dropping a cake she had spent all day making. She dropped it on the subway tracks. So there, which figures in the book.
You pick things up,
exactly.
Although you're probably not aware of it sometimes.
Well, you use your imagination.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Andreas is another charismatic and quite handsome man, is he?
Compelling, yes. He's said to be good-looking, although he's so compelling that we're not even sure.
He comes originally from East Germany, and I couldn't help thinking of Julian Assange.
Yes, and that would upset Andreas a great deal because he's all about that's Assange, this is me. Would we please stop talking about Assange?
Because he gets that comparison.
He gets that, and also Andreas is he's terrified that people will think he's dirty. The name of the book is Purity, and his whole thing with his internet project of exposing secrets, it's all about disinfecting with sunlight. It's all about purity, and he thinks Assange has been tainted by...
But he also has a good appetite when it comes to women.
He does. It all goes back to a very complicated and rotten relationship with that crazy mother. But he does. You know, there are always women and girls in his life. Sure.
And then suddenly he meets a woman that Anna-Gret, and it doesn't work as it usually does for him. And I would love you to read, if you won't mind, a few lines. What happens when Andreas sees this woman and he felt different?
Yes, he's been sleeping with teenage girls he's advising in the basement of a church in East Berlin. Then he meets this girl, Anna-Gret. Seeing her again after a week of merely imagining her, Andreas was overwhelmed by the contrast between love and lust. Love turned out to be soul-crippling, stomach-turning, weirdly claustrophobic, a sense of endlessness bottled up inside him, endless weight, endless potential, with only the small outlet of a shivering pale girl in a bad rain jacket to escape through. Touching her was the farthest thing from his mind. The impulse was to throw himself at her feet.
Which was a totally different reaction.
Totally different reaction. He thinks, he's been living in this kind of wilderness of seduction and discarding the girls, and suddenly he feels love for the first time, and he thinks, this is going to change me, this is going to save me.
It's a very intense moment in the book, and we liked it a lot when we read the book. Purity, why did you choose that? What does it mean? Is it a metaphor, or what is it?
It's, of course, the name of one of the main characters. It is Pip's real name. And I think I stand in relation to the word the same way Pip stands in relation to her name. She hates her name. She thinks, ew, purity. It came out of my thinking about all of the idealistic extremists in the modern world, and how obsessed, no matter what they are, whether they're the Islamic State or right-wing Republicans in the U.S. or the Pirate Party here, everybody who's extreme imagines, oh, everything would be better if we could just make everything really clean and pure.
Because that's what's typical, I think, with your novels, that you can read it as this relation novel, and then it's another level beneath, and that is some kind of metaphor of our society of today.
It's nice if that happens, yes. I mean, I'm most interested in what happens deep inside my characters, but they also do live in the present. And if you live in the present, these things are impinging on you. You are surrounded by digital technology, and you live in a particular political structure. So it's just part of completing the picture of what it's like to be that person, to include the world.
And purity seems to be something that you like to achieve, so you can get rid of all these things that are happening at the same time, which is quite frightening for some people.
It is, exactly. It has to do with, again, if you look at the three groups I mentioned, the Islamic State, the modern world is frightening to them. The Tea Party
attracts a lot of people, young people.
Exactly, and the libertarians in the United States will free ourselves of government. They're again terrified of the modern world, and I think you can see that in the kind of radical Pirate Party types here in Europe. Is if we just get rid of all money, if everything is free, then all the ills of the world will go away. And you see it in the people who think the internet is going to somehow save humanity by exposing everyone's secrets, and once we have no secrets, the world will be a wonderful place with no crime or war.
And you find these purity movements in other places than in religions, as it was more traditionally.
Sure.
Now you can see them in totally different environments.
Different kind of religion nowadays. Tech is its own religion now.
I enjoyed reading it because, but you have to kind of read and stop and then think, because it's not as easy as a human relationship. It's a lot more than that.
I'm glad. Well, thinking is not so bad. It can be fun to think, right?
Are you still, have you a new idea in your head, or are you just traveling around?
Well, I've been on book tour for 8 weeks, but I decided I want to spend the rest of my life writing novels, so I do have a new idea.
And it's waiting up here in your head?
They're always very hazy. It's not, if only it were as easy as you get an idea and you write it down. It's never that easy.
And a guess is it's going to be about relationships?
Sure, I like people. Yeah, all my books are.
So how do you do when you get home? You just trust that if you sit down and start, something will happen?
It all starts with the characters. You need a big character. I need big characters. I need 3, 4, 5 big characters to write a book. And, just thinking about it over and over again, you start to slowly, it's like a star forming or something. At first it's all gaseous, and then it starts to collect. And you try to pull in as many different kinds of things as possible, because that will make the character more complex. And you think about people you've met who've made a strong impression on you. And
So watch out. Maybe you find something here in Sweden
here
as
in
well.
Sweden, well, I already have.
You have?
Well, I found my grandfather here in Sweden.
Yeah, you did. Because you have this Swedish roots.
Nice, yes. I met some people who had spoken to my great-grandfather's ghost.
Wow.
Yes.
And it's going to be in the next novel.
Probably not, but I did. There was a little bit about the Swedish grandfather and freedom.
Mm-hmm. It was so nice to have you here,
Oh,
and maybe we'll see each other in, let's say, 4 years.
Perfect. Sounds like a deal. Thanks very much.
Thank you.